Thanks, Austin. Right on. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. It's humbling to see this many people in the room. People used to say that when they were up here, and I didn't understand what that meant. But I do understand what that means now. I know how many things I'm doing wrong, and you're still willing to come and listen to me. So it's flattering. So I started out being a pretty conventional producer. We did wheat, summer fallow corn. Corn was just for the livestock. Didn't sell much corn, that sort of thing. Went off to Brookings for a few years, came back, still did everything conventional. We were tilling, calving, end of March. We'd start the end of March. We used the pole barn a lot. Background of the calves and little feed lot over the winter, run them up to 700-800 pounds and sell them. Okay, every year, kind of the same kind of thing. And then the South Dakota Crop Improvement Association sponsored a bus tour up into North Dakota. And Marilee, my wife, would you stand up, Mary? This is my wife, Marilee. I was visiting with Marilee about that'd be interesting to go to, but I don't think I have time. And Marilee said, well, you need to think of it as continuing education. You know, teachers go to continuing education, nurses go to continuing education. And I thought about that, and she was right. And so we went on that bus tour, and we went up and we saw Gabe Brown standing out in a cover crop field that came up to about here, and he said he was using less herbicide and less fertilizer, and to the German in me, that really appealed, okay? So we went home from that, and that was end of September, went home and I planted winter triticale and hairy vetch in a soybean field that we'd combined that year. And we threw in some turnips for fun. And that was about 2007, so that's when things kind of took off. And from there, I valued that experience enough that I went to the South Dakota Grasslands Coalition's grazing school. Okay? And that was an awesome experience. I found out how much passion and integrity the directors and the participants in that school had. And I thought I knew quite a bit about grazing and handling cattle, and I found out that I didn't. Okay? So I went back home with a different mindset. And then a couple of years later, got a postcard in the mail that the South Dakota Grasslands Coalition was sponsoring a holistic resource management school, 2.5 days, okay? And I was not interested in going to that, okay? Holistic, floppy hat, bib overalls, not really my deal, you know? But that grazing school had been significant enough, and the integrity that they had built in me, I went to that because it was sponsored by the South Dakota Grasslands Coalition, okay? So that's the foundation that set things in play for change, okay? So I've made a lot of changes. Mary and I have made a lot of changes. Some have stuck, some we've went back. But one of the obvious things we changed was the calving date, okay? This is actually after I changed the calving date. This is the middle of April. I thought I really had it figured out. I moved calving 2-3 weeks down the road, and this is what happened. And if you could see the picture well enough, there's calves in there. And I was not impressed with that despite all my efforts. So we moved calving a little more, and now we start about the 1st of May. Okay? That we have not changed. But a fair number of our changes are that dramatic. Okay? The benefit has been like that. Okay? So the format, I'm going to run through some changes, and then I'll show some pictures. And I've got way more slides and stuff than we've got time. So raise your hand along the way if you got questions. Okay? One of the reasons we went to later calving date, way less labor intensive. I'm able to run a lot more cows than I could the old way. Okay? We mimic nature. You know, you don't see any deer having fawns in the snow. Okay? When I went to that grazing school, they talked a lot about mimicking nature, watching nature. The previous panel, the gentleman said, you know, look around you in nature and see what's going on. And that's what they taught me. And I switched to using moderate birth weight bulls. I was chasing weaning weight for years, high milk EPDs, big frame scores, all of that. And you can do that, and you can end up with big calves, but what do you trade off? What do you give up to get that? Fertility, efficiencies, that sort of thing. So, and I think the lower milking cows are quicker cycling. Anyway, that's what we've done. We run a lot more cows than we used to. Of course, now I'm retirement age. It's time to start dismantling the machine, and that bothers me a lot. But anyway, things we've tried. Tried bale grazing, still bale graze. I've bale grazed for 10, 12 years, doing it today while we're gone. That's why I'm here. The cows are doing the work. The neighbors are watching the water. But I'm watching the water too. Like you'll see later, I've got barn owl cameras on my water tanks. Okay, so I can pull out my phone and I can see what's going on in the water during the summer, during the winter. Sounds like a great deal, except one of my cameras right now is covered with frost. So I'm calling the neighbor saying, "Hey, how's it look?" But anyway, the bale grazing is really working well. For a couple, 3 years, I grazed unharvested standing corn. That worked real well. But I've planted a lot of cropland back to grass, and I planted the fields close to home to grass, and that's where I was grazing corn. I'm less comfortable having the cows further away from home grazing corn during the winter. So I switched. Now I substitute corn for hay. I got to thinking, Terry Gompert had got me going on this corn grazing. He said a cow will do just fine on 10 pounds of corn and 10 pounds of corn stalks. And he said out in the cornfield, if you've got 100 bushel of corn, you got 5,600 pounds of corn. You got 5,600 pounds of corn stalks. He said they'll be hungry yet, but they'll do just fine. Anyway, I get to thinking if they can do it out in the field, they can do it behind the trees on 10 pounds of corn and 10 or 20 pounds of hay. Could be poor hay, whatever. So I started doing that for economics. Okay, it's a cheaper way for me to feed, and it's less labor intensive. I can put up corn a lot quicker than I can put up hay, and I'm getting older, and things like that are going on. And so what I can do with corn is I can replace half of my hay with corn if I need to. Okay? In the driest year that's ever come along, I can get on the phone and I can have a semi-load of corn in my yard that day or the next day. Okay? Not the story with hay. Dry year, you get on the phone, you get on the phone, you get on the phone. So feeding corn has reduced my anxiety level on the dry years. Okay? I don't worry as much because I can almost always put up at least half the hay that I need. Okay? So that's been a game changer. Swath grazing worked good. Did a little bit of it this year. I left the inside of a sedan grass mixed field, and we got that snow. There's maybe 3 or 4 rounds. We got that snow on it, and we got rain on top of the snow. So we got snow like that, and it's hard like that. You could drive right over it. And I don't have a picture, I'm sorry, but those cows busted through that, and they followed those windrows around. And that wasn't the only thing they had to pick from. They had standing sedan grass, and they had corn stubble. So when the cows want to, they can really dig through that. I wondered if, now that you know I'm the speaker, if you'd mind if I took the jacket off. That'd be okay. Thanks. Okay. So swath grazing is a pretty good tool. Grazing the standing cover crops is good. That's warm season cover crop grazing, but it's riskier. Okay. In the sense that you don't get your harvest efficiency may not be as good. They might not be able to eat as much when you get snow. That's what happened this year. Mary had a honeybee field one year that was tall, and we grazed those in November. And that snow came in off a soybean field. Neighbors, I have beans too, and we never got to graze that field. Okay, good for the soil, not dramatically good like I had expected, but we didn't get a penny's worth of grazing off that. If I'd have dropped that into swaths, okay, we'd have got some. What I do now on the warm season covers is I swath and bale some of them, and I try to do it early enough so that warm season cover crop can grow back. That second growth, Dan Forgy tells me that second growth is a tremendous root adventure that benefits your soil a lot. So I try to cut it early enough so I can get regrowth. And then, of course, you can graze it. We tried moving cattle every day. Did that for 3, 4, 5 years. And was moving 2 bunches once a day. That gets to be a bit much. I was getting pretty owly to be around. And Mary said, well, why don't you just quit for a few days? And I said, oh, I can't do that. Yeah, you can. So we just kicked him into a week's worth at a time. And by then, now I move maybe every 3 to 5 to 7 days during the grazing season. Depends on what's going on, allocation. I did not, I saw maybe we could say we saw a 25% increase in what's going on out there. What was really cool and what has been cool is we've gotten to see a lot of plants go to maturity. You know, the big blue stem, the Indian grass, that sort of thing, and we've seen those spread. And we didn't notice them before. You know, didn't have a continuous graze deal, but kind of sometimes. So anyway, we still move cattle a lot. Something we tried that I really like are the above ground water lines. And if we're running an above ground water line, we also have a system where we drop a submersible pump in and have the pressure tank above ground during the summer. Just set it there, you know. And in the fall, you gather up your tank. And I learned that from driving down the road. I saw a tank along the road. I said, what's that guy doing? So I swung in, and that's what he was doing. I thought, I can do that. So, okay. This is bale grazing set up. Sometimes I set them on ends. Those had net wrap. I have a love-hate relationship with net wrap. But the ones tipped on end had net wrap. The other ones had twine. So that's, when I'm doing it right, when I'm really at the top of my game, I set all my bales up in the fall. Okay, I'm not hardly ever at the top of my game. So I do pretty good if I get the stacks hauled out in the fall. And then I'll go out every couple weeks and I'll set out my bales in rows. Part of that's fear of commitment, too. If we get a big storm, I've got this big honking snowblower that I bought from my neighbors. Pretty sure I can blow my way out to the stack and haul it back in. I've never had to do that, but if I needed to, I could. Jay Rister up in North Dakota talked about the year they had all that snow. He had to lead the cows out with the horse, and the cows are having to eat down into the bales, and he and Gabe said it worked. But I'm not young enough to lead them out through the snow with the horse anymore. So, yes, sir?
Yeah. Do you have a spacing that works better?
I have a bale on the back of the tractor and a bale on the front when I'm setting them up, and just enough room so I can unload and get out of there, okay? Yeah. You can see the cows working on the old ones, and you can see the cow that got out up there. She's up the end, but we'd usually give about minimum of maybe 3 or 4 days worth at a time, because you want enough out there so that everybody can get around a bale. If you just do a day's worth at a time, it's probably enough hay, but they can't all get at it. So the big ones get it to push the other ones away. I was listening to 2 old guys talking. They're probably the age I am now, but they were talking about bale grazing. And the one guy was telling the other, he said, well, you've bale grazed for years. And the guy said, what? He says, well, don't you remember during wrestling tournaments when your kids were wrestling, you just put out 3 or 4 days worth of hay and go? I said, yeah, this isn't new technology. This is a new idea, okay? Yeah, that's what they do. They hang around. Sometimes when there's snow, sometimes they come in and drink, and sometimes they don't. My cows eat snow quite a lot. I've grazed cornfields of neighbors that have no water, just having them eat snow from 2 weeks to a month. If I have water, I make sure they can get water. If I don't have water but I have good snow, I'll graze it anyway. But they do fine. They piss a little blood once in a while, so maybe I just think they're doing fine, but I'm still going, okay? This is a neat situation here. Bale grazing can drop your stress level. We gave them 2 weeks worth of hay this time. Mary was sick a few years ago. They had to take one of her kidneys out, and we didn't know how long we were going to be gone. So I called my neighbors. It's been kind of a rough day, but it's been a good day. But I called my neighbors, and they came over with a couple loaders, and I had my stack mover, and I was hauling bales out, and they were rearranging them. And so we just gave them 2 weeks, and we headed down to Sioux Falls. And I told them if we're not back, just turn them into another 2 weeks. It worked just fine. Really dropped the stress level. And like I said, same thing coming here. Put out the bales. Cows are used to it. We can just get in and go. Pretty sure there's not going to be any problems while we're gone. As long as the neighbors will keep the water working, those cows will be fine. I put out a little extra, take until Saturday. Okay, it rained. That spring we were bale grazing, it rained, and this is what it looked like. That's an alfalfa wheatgrass mix there, and I thought, oh, gee, I ruined this. I wasn't panicking too much, but I thought, I ruined that. This is what it looked like when we came back. 30 days later, 45. You can see the 2 trees way in the background, so I'm not messing with you. 2 trees are still there, okay? Alfalfa seems to like being beat up. Okay, those cows muck that up, and they do fine. This is a bale core where they spread the residue out, and that's snow underneath there, right? And one of the cool things that happens, I think, is when it opens up in the spring, the stuff out there that hasn't been bale grazed, that snow and that manure and stuff melts off and it runs off, right? Not a lot of it goes in. This is in the cooler, okay? And this doesn't really thaw out until that other ground is opened up. So this stuff isn't going down the creek, it's going over a little ways and down, okay? This is what you see. This was 2017. It's easy to see where we bale grazed, you know, and some of that was we bale grazed it last year, some we grazed 2 years ago, okay? So the effect sticks around. This is grazing the standing corn. Just combine a little bit of your corn, get an idea what the yield is, do the math on a calculator, figure out how many square feet you need. What we would do is I would leave 30 rows of uncombined corn, and I'd make a pass with the combine, leave another 30 rows, leave a pass, and then I'd have done the math. There's going to be 100 cows out here, 200, whatever, need 2,000 pounds. And so then I'd calculate how far down the 30 rows to go. And sometimes I'd combine across because I need a visual for the cows. When they're coming through, I want them to see that string. Or sometimes I'd just drag a tractor tire or drive the four-wheeler. Go ahead, Van.
How many days of corn will you give them safely?
1 day at a time is all I was brave enough to do. I've talked to people that have done more. There's a guy up in Canada who gives them 30 days worth at a time. I called him. I needed to know more about this, and he was willing to talk to me, but he didn't have a lot of time because he'd just turned them into 30 days worth of corn, and he was going to load his horses up in his trailer and go down to Arizona for a while, and when he was gone, his son was going to move the cows, okay? But I move them every day. Okay, so what does that mean? That means you need cows that really respect electric fence, right? Because they're going to be hungry. They're eating 20 pounds worth of feed, and they're used to eating 40, okay? They're eating 10 pounds of corn, 10 pounds of corn stalks, and then I'll give them alfalfa on Mondays and Thursdays, okay? Alfalfa days are Mondays and Thursdays. So these cows are around electric fence all year long, so they're pretty well trained, and they're around some big fencers, okay? The guys that taught me how to do this said buy as big a fencer as you can afford, but I'm German, so I didn't at first, okay? But after I did, I started buying bigger fencers, and that helped a lot with keeping cows in. Then if you need to, if it's during the winter, you got some cows you need to train, go where the water source is, okay? And take and run a little short electric fence, maybe 30 feet, up kind of next to that water source, so where when the cows are jostling around, they bump into it, okay? Take a fencer, dedicate it to that 30 feet, run the ground on one string, run two strings, run ground on one string and run the other string hot, okay? When they're moving around, they'll bump into both of those strings. They got a really good ground, and they get a really good shock, you know? And then they're going to respect more out in the field, okay? There is risk if they bust through that you could lose some cows doing this, okay? But it's a lot cheaper way of feeding than just feeding straight hay. So there is some risk. I tried to build tomorrow's fence today. That's a Jim Garish deal. So I would put up today's fence, and then I would go down. You can see that post pounder. I don't know. You can see it right there. Okay. So then I go down and I'd put the next day's in. So it was just a checkerboard. It was a checkerboard out in the cornfield. It really worked well, so I quit doing it. That's the way I am. Yeah. It's another shot of them. Yeah, okay. So I mentioned we use snow for water. Still willing to do that. I'd rather have them drink water, but if I don't, they eat snow, they do fine. First time I started doing it, that's scary, by the way, when you first start. You hear these guys, we heard the guys at Burley County talking about it. They heard the guys up in Canada talking about it. So, and you got to factor out what's BS and what's really going on, you know. But anyway, went home, turned them out, and kind of drive out to take a look at them. Well, my cows are liars, okay, whether it's water or feed. But as soon as, you know, they've been thirsty for a day, maybe 2 days, you come over the hill, and it's blah, 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 you know. So the first 2, 3 days you check them, if you try that, just kind of peek over the hill and see how they're doing, okay? And then they're fine. Then They're fine if you got the right kind of snow, okay? Then come back, and later on you can drive up to them. So the first time I did it, maybe it was 2 weeks over in this quarter that we typically let them home to drink. And I left them out there for 2 weeks, and they're eating covers and they're grazing stubble residue. I let them home, and they go across the road, and these cows know the water tank's down in the yard. Okay, they've done it for years, they know. And but I wanted to mess with them a little, and so they came out the gate, and I took the pickup and I kind of led them out toward some corn stalks that were still in that quarter, and they passed me. They went running out, and they're kicking and they're frolicking like they do when they get a lot of energy. So they were 2 weeks without water, and they weren't really too worried about going to get a drink, and they were doing really well. They were happy cows. Okay, we went to calving, and we quit tagging calves for a while. Okay, seemed like a good idea, and it is a good idea if you're an old guy and you don't want to get beat up. Okay, so we quit doing that. But what we found out calving in May and June is cows were leaving their calves at the water tank, and Mary does a fantastic job with bucket calves, but there's a limit to how many, you know, and so we didn't know whose calves they were, and the cows didn't seem to care. Maybe they were twins, I don't know. So we went back to tagging. We tag now, but we do not die on the hill. Okay, if we know some cows that we don't tag, and if I'm pretty sure you're not bluffing, you don't need a tag, you know. Yeah. Anyway, tags are nice. We went back to them. We use smaller birth weight bulls. Am I talking too fast? Can you understand what I'm saying? Because I can slow down. I get all excited. I want to tell you everything so you can sort through what you want. Incidentally, when you go to the shoe store, okay, if you go in, there are different shapes, sizes, colors, designs for a reason. Okay? The shoe that fits you isn't the shoe that fits me. Okay? If I try to make you fit into my shoe, you're going to be uncomfortable. And it's just not going to work. Okay? This is my shoe store. Okay? If there's something in here that you're interested in, you get a hold of me and I'll talk your ear off about it. Okay? But I'm just laying it out there for you to look at. I used to be a promoter. And I used to think, well, if I'm doing it, everybody should do it. No. Don't drink any too much of anybody's Kool-Aid. Okay? Drink a little, see how it goes. Look for the shoes that fit you. We went to smaller birth weight bulls. We don't have much calving trouble. We pull a calf once in a great while. Usually it's my fault. You know, I get some crossbred stuff. But we buy bulls from Bart, use on the heifers. Pretty trouble-free deal there. I shouldn't tell you that because it's going to cost me more money for bulls. But anyway, guy in the black hat, that's a good source. Okay, I say I want smaller cows. I say I want 1,200-pound cows. And I do. And I overshot the mark. I kept some that were real small and some big. And my herd's still all over the place. And I keep a lot of my own bulls. And when I go to pick out bulls, my eye goes to the bigger calves. And so this journey to smaller calves has not been all it could be, okay? But, it's working. I mentioned lower milk EPDs. This is one of the ways I'll feed corn. I've got a bin with an auger, electric auger. I just pull up under the auger. It's got a slide thing on it. I timed it 2 minutes. I drove to town, weighed the wagon, weighed it empty, and I knew, okay, this is how much it augers if I open it up to that mark. You could do the same thing. I had another deal at another place where I just stuck a PTO auger in a grain bin, hooked up the 4020 to it at 1,500 RPM for 1 minute. That's what I need, okay? And if there's a lot of different ways I've tried with this. I ran a rope in a pulley system, put a little door, like an old bin door in the side there, and you can drive around the pickup and pull the rope. And you'll do that for a couple of years, and then your shoulder goes, okay? Found out you can do just as good a job just stopping the pickup, going back and cracking that thing open about that far, hopping back in the pickup and taking off. I've tried piles. When I'm using this system with a gravity wagon, I'll usually either go in a circle or two lines beside each other because they're pretty aggressive. Some cows will just follow you. and the ones in the back get pushed away. So if I've got a line here, they have less competition. They're able to get at it. Cows they'll push all over that wagon. Had a neighbor help me solve that. He didn't even know it. He told me this trick years ago. He said the dogs were whizzing on his pickup tires, and it made him mad. So he said, I hooked an electric fence up to my pickup. He said that took care of that, electric fence. So I duct taped a battery onto the frame on that thing, and I duct taped a fencer on one of those little Parmac ones, and I drug a chain on the ground, and I hooked up that fencer, and boy, that took care of that. It made me feel good, too. Yeah. Sometimes we graze the warm season covers when they're green, when you probably should. Sometimes we graze them in October. Sometimes we'll graze them in December. This is a pathway. I drug a semi-tire behind the four-wheeler to make the path. You can, when it's green like that, you can run around out there with a side-by-side, a four-wheeler, no big deal. When it's brown, that side-by-side, it's more of a dangerous thing to have that out there. I smell smoke every once in a while, and I stop and find a stalk. I haven't had a bad thing, but I've kind of quit doing the side-by-side, dragging the tire around and stuff like that. So I've also just taken the loader bucket, push, that's fun too. Doesn't cost much, goes fast. We raise about 80% of our own bulls. Quit using pour-ons a long time ago. Started using insecticide again last year, doing some fly spraying on the cows. Did it help? Well, it made me feel better. I don't know. I know you can move away from the flies. They tell me you can. I don't know. I'm not a good enough manager to pull that off, I guess. We use the barn owl cameras on the water tanks. Oh, we wean at 10 months old. That's I haven't used a feed wagon in 15 years, okay? I leave the calves on the cows. First time we touch the calf, we tag them. And I think that tagging was a good experience because it taught the calf that it could be traumatized, and it worked out okay. But anyway, we handle the calves now when we're tagging them. Then we really don't do anything with the calves until January. The other day we ran some through and we banded them, gave them their first round of shots, kind of the only round of shots they'll get. And then I'll wean them in March, I don't know, something like that, maybe February. Go ahead.
The first couple of years when you started weaning at 10 months, did you kick a lot of cows out?
Yeah.
Not rebreeding?
Yeah, we lost some cows. Maybe we were running 25% open or something like that. But which variable was it? That was the same time I also grazed some corn, standing corn at a neighbor's place without water and calves on them. Maybe I was pushing them a little too much. When I went to the grazing things that talk about this, they said that's okay if you lose 25%. They're the ones you need to get rid of. So I console myself with that. But then a couple of years later, last year, they really bred up good. Okay, I mean, we didn't have near the opens, and we run maybe 10, 15% open now. I don't know. Last year it was less than that, and so then I really felt good about that too. Okay, so I don't know. I picked my poison. So yeah, when I started pushing them, things fell out. It didn't bother me much because I was ready for it. For a while, we kept almost all the heifers. Notice I didn't say all the heifers. We kept almost all the heifers and ran the bulls with them and then just sold the open ones as grass cattle. And that bothered the veterinarian when he was PGing. That bothered the people that were helping. It bothered Mary, too. It was like, first, when we started, he'd say, open! And they'd draw a circle and, open, open, And the guys helping me, they were all kind of, like that. So, well, we're selling half of them as grass cattle. Sean?
Talk a little bit why you wait 10 months to
Okay, so the cow is working for me instead of me working for the cow. Okay, the cow's not doing anything the whole winter. You wean the calf off, she's not doing anything. She becomes a low-cost protein supplement for that calf. Okay. I wonder sometimes why I'm doing it exactly like that now. Is it because I've gotten used to it and I don't want to go back to working earlier, things like that? The market for these calves in the spring is hotter than a pistol. The yearlings that are weighing 600 pounds, they sell really good. And, I used to have nightmares about that, a nightmare. One night I dreamt that my calves came in the sale barn, ring, and I'm sitting there, and nobody would bid on them. That's a nightmare. That's not a dream. That's a nightmare. And I woke up from that and so that in the back of my mind, my low self-esteem, that's what I'm thinking. But a couple of years ago, I've been selling my steers with Kim Ulmer for years. And he was telling me after the sale that the guy that bought them the year before was bidding against the guy that bought them 2 years before that. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. Sean, what are some other reasons that we would go to 10-month calving?
Well, I'm curious to
10-month
know
wean.
if you had a different operation and you fed your cattle more in a lot situation, would you leave your calves on then? Or are you doing this in a grazing situation where possibly the mama's teaching that calf where to go for shelter, where to go for water, what to select?
Yep.
Those are some questions I guess.
Yeah, good valid points. I think I started doing it because I heard somebody say it was a good idea, and it sounded like less work, But everything you say is valid. The cows are teaching the calves. My cows have taught the calves to eat snow. They watch, they catch on. Cows have taught the calves to eat Canada thistle. Not a lot, but go ahead.
Isn't one of the other concepts rumen development, that rumen is fully developed between 10 and 12 months? And,
Okay.
You're going to have an epigenetic efficiency in those heifers and calves after weaning. They're going to be better off.
Works for me. Did you guys hear that? Your rumen, the rumen maybe develops better while it's on the cow, right? Is that a summary? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they actually say that your rumen doesn't develop fully until 10 months. So if you keep your heifers and leave them on cows, and the rest of them, the steers you can take off because if you're not gonna keep them, if you're
Yep.
go to selling them for food and stuff like that, you can definitely do that with your steers and stuff, but then basically you don't get your full rumen development until 10 months, so that helps.
Cool. Thank you, both of you. All of you. You'll notice I'm not a real technical kind of guy. This is working and I keep doing it. We try new things. If it works, yeah. I'm not an agronomist. I don't know a lot about the bugs. I know what works. But anyway, thank you for what you've contributed.
Another thing, Doug, how many calves are you treating, with all this weather and all that going on?
Yeah, we hardly have sick, qualify that. During the winter, we hardly have sick ones. I've made some mistakes with water sources not having enough capacity at the tank and then switching from a tank to a dugout. Two different things 2 years in a row where I had a lot of sick calves in that September, October range. Bought a lot of darts, used a lot of generic Draxin. So but other than that, we don't have a lot of health troubles, okay? Haven't vaccinated the cows they get, when they're a first calf heifer, when they bangs vaccinate, we give them a breeding shot, Vibrio lepto, but haven't done anything for the cows for a long time. Cows rubbed a little, we don't pour anymore. We had a little rubbing the first couple of years, and that bothered me. Pretty much a non-issue now. There's a little rubbing, but not much. Would you rather I go fast and try to get it through it all? Or, what?
We're right at the break time.
Well, I guess we're done.
But you'll be around here, if people want to stick around.
Planted green into soybeans there. You can ask me about that later if you want to. Good mat, suppressed the weeds good. Didn't have to spray much for chemicals.
Were you crimping?
No, just used a John Deere 750 no-till drill, or not 750, 1590. Just drove over it, pushed it down. That's my roller. Adaptive management, my friend Dennis Hoyle, he told me a long time ago, you got to stay light on your feet. All this stuff, stay light on your feet. Thanks for your attention.